Please pray with me. Spirit of wisdom and light, minister to us, your people. May only truth be spoken, may only truth be heard, we ask. Amen. Remember the old saying we were taught when we were kids at school by our parents? Sticks and stones will break my bones, but... That's right. It gave us a bit of protection. I remember, somebody would call me a name, I'd say that back to them. But when we internalize some of the names that we're given, it has a profound effect on us. And the truth sometimes might be better said that sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can really hurt me. That's part of the reality too. There's a branch of therapy called narrative therapy that helps people focus on words and ways that they describe themselves, and to change those words and ways they describe themselves as a way of changing their whole lives. In fact, all of therapy leans on that principle. For better or worse, the way we describe ourselves to ourselves often becomes who we are. Think of that power. Now, when we think of names, we think of our own name, the name our parents named us, like lover of horses. And some of us like our names better than others. They tell us something about the family we're connected to and part of our identity. Sometimes we choose our middle name because we prefer that. Sometimes we go by nicknames. In the country, everybody has a nickname. They keep them for generations. It's kind of cool. I never did find out what mine was, and I was a little too afraid to poke too deeply to find out. In an earlier age, when our ancestors lived in tribes or clans, and this is true of those doing traditional practices in the indigenous peoples in Canada, when you become of age to be seen as an adult, you will go through a process, maybe go to sweat lodges for a while, or be sent on a journey with no food or water for a while. And then you'll come back and the elders will gather around you and they'll give you your special name. And that name becomes critical because it becomes a part of who you understand the elders want you to be, what they see in you. It's always a name to draw something out of you, and a very powerful experience, and a very powerful symbol, and a very powerful part of identity. And of course, this is where the meaning of our names comes from. In the ancient world, the thought that was given behind them. My name is Paul, it means small, or in spiritual terms, humble. So I was named after the Apostle Paul, and so I realized, he had many gifts, I had many gifts, and yet he was humble because he realized they all came from God, and without God's intervention in his life would have ended up miserably. And so that was a reminder to me that there's nothing to be proud about. Everything we have that's good comes from the Creator. We didn't invent ourselves. And then we have a responsibility to use our gifts in a positive way, like Paul did. So that's all been a part of my identity journey. Now, sometimes names are changed or given as a reward, such as when someone is knighted, or someone's name is changed as a sign of a new responsibility, like when you get married, some of you change your last name. There was quite a buzz around UCW in Tupperville when they discovered that I had taken my wife's last name instead of her taking mine. Oh, did you hear? Oh, I took his wife's last name. It was quite unheard of, I guess. And of course, when you become a pope, you get to choose your name, and you pick a pope that you really admire because you want to call out those traits in you. Our ancestors knew better than us the power of a name. That's why the Jews were afraid to speak God's name. Not because they were afraid of God, although some of them were, but because to name someone is to have some power over them. The Jews understood that God is mystery beyond definition. They didn't create doctrine like most religions, including Christianity, do. They told stories. Because they understood that the moment you start trying to define God, you've lost God. God is to define us. And talking about God glibly, as we tend to do, makes God into something tame, something we feel that we can control, a form of an idol. And so, as I mentioned before, the word they picked for God were the breathy vowels in their language to help them remember that God was not a bearded man in the sky, or not some statue like the other cultures bowed down to, but was spirit. And in Hebrew, the same word for spirit and breath indicate that they understood our very life force is divine. And so they call God Yahweh. There's power in the names we claim. Think of Jacob, we just sang a little while ago. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Son of Abraham, the father of the Jewish people, whose 12 sons headed the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob's name meant swindler. What a name, given to him because he swindled his brother out of his inheritance. And because of his name, other people swindled him. I mean, it's all right to swindle a swindler, and you better swindle a swindler before they swindle you. Hey, that happened pretty good. And so, just as he had swindled his brother, a member of his family swindled him. He had to run away from his brother, and his uncle swindled him. He fell in love with his uncle's second daughter, Rachel. His uncle said, "You work for me for 7 years without wages, and you can have her." And so at the wedding, the uncle smuggled the older sister into his bed with a veil over her, and he woke up to the fact that he'd married the older daughter. And so he had to work another 7 years to get the one he really wanted. Well, life kept going that way for Jacob until he kind of got tired of his life of being a swindler and being swindled, and he longed to make things right with his brother. The Spirit was working, and he came to himself. There's an expression in the Bible that's a great expression. He came to himself, and he said, things have got to change. This is not the life I want. I've got to go home and make things right with his brother. But as he went to go home, he sent scouts out, and the scout came back and said, "Oh, Jacob," he said, "your brother's coming, but he's got an army armed to the teeth." And so Jacob spent a fitful night, and in his sleep, he had a vision of a ladder with angels coming up and down. And he said to those angels, "I need a blessing from God to help me deal with my brother. My life's in danger. I'm a mess. I need help." He came to the end of himself, and he wouldn't let those angels of God leave. And he wrestled with them until the morning time, and finally the angel said, "Okay, I believe you want to change. I believe you really want to change. So I'm going to change your name. You're not going to be Jacob the swindler anymore. You're going to be Israel, someone who has power with God. But I'm going to cripple you, because I want you to remember that all comes from God. I don't want you getting tripped up by your arrogance and your plans and your conniving. Those are the old days. You need to be a man of humble gratitude." And so he became Israel, one who has power with God, the leader of a nation who walked humbly with God. We don't have to carry the old baggage that defines us. We don't have to continue to think of ourselves in ways that make us insecure or anxious or angry or depressed. We don't need to stay stuck in negativity and shame and insecurity. The prophet Isaiah says, "Listen to me. Listen to the one who has created you, not as Jacob, but as Israel." And now he's speaking to all of Israel and speaking to us. "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have forgiven you and rescued you from your lower self and your ignoble name. And I have called you by your true name. You are mine." There's our true name. We are God's beloved children. Or as Paul the Apostle put it, we are God's workmanship, created in the Spirit of Jesus to bless others, which is our cosmic mission from the beginning of time. We were present in that great explosion that started this whole universe 13.5 billion years ago. And here, this is our moment, where our bodies actually contain stardust. This is our moment to partner with the Creator on planet Earth to make this place and to make those around us the way we're meant to be. These are good verses to put on our refrigerator or beside our bed or to memorize, so that when we move into those old stories that make us feel not so well, we can claim our new name. Listen to the one who's created you. Fear not, for I have redeemed you from lesser things and called you by name. You are mine. So don't ever put yourself up on the auction block of life and allow what others think of you to define who you are and your sense of worth and sense of well-being. Don't live beneath the dignity of your God-divine created self. Never forget whose we are. Because when we remember whose we are, we know who we are. If we don't know whose we are, we're on the auction block of life. And what we think about ourselves will change daily as the people's opinion around us change. I met a wonderful family at a cup banquet years ago. And this woman had 2 boys in cups, and they were great and high achievers. And she was saying about all these great things they were doing. But I kept hearing and noticing that she was worrying about them. Everything she'd say, there was a worry attached. And I said, your kids are doing so great. Why do you worry so much? And she replied with a phrase I've heard many times, oh, it's my job to worry. I'm a mother. Now, you can claim that if you want. But it's nobody's job to worry. Unless you want to, if that works for you. It's an awful name, I think, to claim, because it holds a negative power over those who claim it, and it doesn't accomplish much. Although somebody said to me once, my worrying must work, because most of what I worry about never happens. God says, listen to me. Listen to the one who created you. Fear not, for I've redeemed you from lesser things and called you by name, for you are mine. Wouldn't our children and grandchildren do better knowing that we don't worry about them? Because we believe that although they're only ours for a little while, they're God's forever. Wouldn't it be better to tell them that that's why we're not worried about them? Because we know God loves them, and God's with them, and God's at work in their heart. Wouldn't our children and grandchildren and all of us do better rejoicing in the fact that God knows us and calls us by name? And that's what our story of Jesus' baptism is celebrating. A young man comes to the Jordan. He's been given many names by different people. Some of them think it's Mary's boy, no father. Some of them think it's a family cursed by God. Some of them think, oh, well, he's a good carpenter. He's pleasant enough. Nobody's special, though. But somehow John's preaching opened Jesus' eyes to the fact that he could make a difference in the world. And that his life had come from God, and that put a spring in his step. And he went down to get baptized. Because John was preaching that it's an all-hands-on-deck moment where we all need to be engaged as agents of God in this world to bring in the reign of God, the kingdom of God. And so Jesus got it, and he got a new name. You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And what did he talk about all through his ministry? How God is our daddy. A new image for God as daddy, who loves us and cares for us. We don't have to be afraid of daddy. Daddy forgives easily. And so, you got that new name, and it meant the world to him. I met with somebody a couple of weeks ago. Beautiful person, talented, wise. But she's had more trauma in her childhood and in an incident at work. I couldn't begin to describe it, and it's beyond anything I can really imagine. And so she struggled with PSTD. And once she heard her psychiatrist and another doctor conferring, and she heard them say this, she'll never be normal again. And that's kind of stuck with her as a name. I'll never be normal again. And I said to her, you know, that's a terrible name. I mean, what's normal anyway? I said, the worst things that can happen to us, they change us. But I said, I just invite you to soak in God's love for you and how God is present with you in your difficulties, and he cares for you, and he believes in you, and he knows you have the capacity to be an incredible blessing to other people. And I said, go deep in soaking in God's love and your identity as his child, not as someone who will never be loved again. And the tears began to flow, and she felt numb for a few months. And so the first thing she was feeling in a few months was this opening of tears, of joy that yes, there was hope. Yes, she could name herself differently. Yes, she could soak and live out of God's love. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the waters, they will not drown you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be consumed, for I am the Lord your God. And so may we never forget whose we are and who we are. Thanks be to God.